Welcome to Season 5 of SheVentures. I am your host, Doria Lavanino. SheVentures is a podcast about women and their work and life pivots. I believe in the power of storytelling. I also believe that if you change one woman's life, you start to change a family or a community. Our mission is to elevate the diverse stories of everyday women in their work. One promise, no mansplaining ever. Sit back, listen, and hit subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. You can find us at SheVenturesPodcast.com. This woman spent more than a decade coaching solopreneurs and small business owners, 200 and counting, probably many more, who struggle to sell. And I identify with that. And that is how I found her, is the fact that she talked about selling in a way that is non-sleazy, because that's how I feel when I sell. She recently pivoted and rebranded. So you will now find her as Quirk Works Consulting. She will still be running the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy. And we're going to go a little bit into why she rebranded. Her work is inspired by helping people like me, I think a lot of creatives, but a lot of professionals as well. And we're flummoxed by monetization. I also love her volunteer work and the fact that she is working with those that have criminal records and helping them become job ready, which I know reduces recidivism and is so important. I just really want to hear from her. She's so dynamic. What drives her to affect all these changes in people's lives? Annie Ruggles, welcome to SheVentures.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
I love everything about you, at least so far. No, I'm kidding. You are amazing, and you're so different than I think what many of us find in the online space, right? So I wanted to just explore a little bit, since SheVentures is about pivots. Your earlier life, you studied musical theater, and I wanted to know how that interest shaped your early life, personally and professionally.
Oh, musical theater. So I love theater with my whole heart, and I hate competition and not knowing if you can trust your friends because you don't know if they're on your team or they're against you. And also, I hated every single thing about, like, I don't have any control if they pick me or not. Like, I could do the best work I've ever done. And I'm a chubby, short, brunette redhead. Like, if they want a leggy blonde rockette, they're not casting me, right? But so that's how I came away from theater. But let's start at the very beginning. So I am the daughter of a motivational speaker. My whole life, everyone would be like, when are you going to be on stage with your mom or like your mom? And I was like, never. Speaking is her thing. But I had all this exuberant energy, and I'm an introvert. I learned as a young kid that as a tiny, tiny, preemie baby child, if I needed attention because I was, 4 feet tall, the best thing I could do was get loud, make my face real big, make my eyes real big. And so I found that was my home. Like, that was my self-expression. I was a very quiet kid otherwise. I loved to read. I'm an only child. I would soak up a lot of that time. I still do. But when it came time for, Annie's needs aren't being met, one of those needs being, attention or nurturing or praise or validation or whatever a kid needs, I was like, I need to do something. Right? Like, just immediately, like, here it goes. Because I have that performance gift from my mom and other members of my extended ancestry on both sides. But that's how it started. And then luckily, those same parents, my mom and dad, really fostered theater in me. It takes a lot you hear a lot about stage parents, right? Oh, they're terrible, blah, blah, blah. It takes a lot to drive your kid to rehearsal every single day. It takes a lot to have to change your speaking schedule and fly home at 3:00 in the morning so you don't miss a recital of a show you've already seen. It takes a lot, but they did it theater for me was never a side job. It was always what I was planning to pursue. So it wasn't like this big epiphany. It was just everyone's going, oh, she's going to be on stage like your mom. And I'm like, don't say that. I sing, right? But
Especially as a teen, right? You're like, not going to be anything
oh,
like my
gosh.
mom.
Which is hilarious because now I'm like actually speaking and dyed my hair red. So now I basically just am my mom. Like it's kind of wild. Hi, mama. You know, what happened from there is I learned how to read a room. And I think that has stayed with me to this day and where the theater shows up the most. Yes, I'm willing to do zany things on camera. Yes, I'm good at improvising and I can think quickly on my feet because I'm trained to. But really, where the theater comes in and comes in and comes in is if I deliver a piece of content or if I say something, I can tell how that answer affected you. I'm highly empathic, but I'm also a trained performer. And it doesn't matter if it's one person on Zoom or 2,000 people in a room. If I'm not doing my job, I can feel it. And if I'm doing my job, I can follow it. And so that's how the theater has kind of continued, is that love of communication and changing minds. Because that's really, if you watch a musical or you watch a play, some of them are light and fluffy and airy, and some of them are really dark. But most of the time, you're there to learn something, to feel something, to unlock something that you've been struggling to feel, or to be inspired. And the way that they do that is because the people on the stage are manipulating you with consent, working with your emotions to provide something for you. And that's what I do every single day. I manipulate emotions with full consent. Now I teach other people how to be resonant, how to be magnetic, how to self-advocate, how to take up space, and yes, how to connect on a deep emotional level no matter what you're delivering.
And it reminds me of, and we can get into this a little bit later, but I watched your video where you talk about the big M manipulation and little M manipulation, and I want to get to that. But you kind of intuited my next question, which was going to be, how has musical theater helped you as an entrepreneur? It sounds like certainly it's helped you read a room. Are there other ways in which it's helped you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the other biggest ways is that I'm a natural collaborator. People have this idea about only children and theater kids, and I'm both. The idea about only children and theater kids is that we're just like raging narcissists who are like, me, 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 me. We don't share. We don't know. I was a very lonely kid. I was a very lonely kid. And I loved being an only child at some point. But like, if another kid wanted to hang out with me, we hung out. If another kid, right? Any of those things. And theater was the same way. I do not prefer, in the roles I've played, and my resume will affirm this, in the roles I've played, I very rarely go for the star slot. I am almost always comic relief or featured chorus. And that's how I see myself in my businesses. I am not here to run your show, nor am I here to dull your sparkle. I am a consultant. I'm an advisor. I am a mentor. I'm going to cheerlead behind you and sing backup for you so that you can take your moment in the sun. And I don't feel slighted by that in the least. I'm a chorus girl. And that shows up into my podcast. People say, Annie, why don't you have a solo podcast? Why do you only do interview shows? And I said, well, I have little videos here and there that I do just me, but I have always loved duets. I have always loved choir work. I have always loved singing with a band and showcasing the band. That's just how I am. That's just how I work. And so every single day of my life is about collaboration. And I learned that from theater.
We learned that from theater. And you were very open when I was kind of going through your site, and I found you, I think, a year ago, and I was just like,
right?
oh my God, this message so resonates with me, and I'm still kind of stuck in the same way that I was. But anyway.
Okay, well, then you and I need to talk about that off screen.
Yeah, I know. You're very open about your own monetization struggles early on, right?
Oh.
Talk to our listeners a little bit about that. What was that like? And how did you figure it out eventually?
I look a lot at it as kind of like grade school bullying in that, hear me out. Grade school bullying is really messed up and no kid should have to deal with it. Entrepreneurship is freaking hard. It's a rite of passage in some ways. It sucks. I wish we didn't have to go through the lean times and the struggles, but we all do, number one. Number two, when I was bullied in grade school, made it so much worse on myself because I thought at the time as a 12-year-old that the best thing I could do would just be conform. Like, they don't like me, turn into someone that they do like. And I literally, this is so sad, I like passed around a note being like, what would you change about Annie? I was so desperate to be liked. I was literally willing to follow trends about it. I made it worse on myself, which I feel also, I made so many decisions as an early entrepreneur where I took the reality of how challenging it is, internalized that, made it about me, and went, I'm not marketable enough. I'm not likable enough. I got to do something else. I got to double down, right? And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Grade school bullying is the worst. We all have to deal with it. I'm sorry. I wish we didn't. Entrepreneurship is really freaking hard. You are told that it's going to be really freaking easy. It's not. It's really freaking hard. But how you handle that matters, because as an early business, I made a lot of mistakes. So I took the nasty landscape and then heaped on mismanagement right on top of it. But just like grade school bullying, it's something that you're like, I have a goal. My goal is getting the hell out of this middle school so I can get to high school and be totally happy and a self-actualized, 14-year-old. And entrepreneurship is the same way. I'm not quitting today. And it's so interesting because I really can't tell, even as after a decade plus as a strategist, looking back, I could see the mistakes that I made and I could see the challenges inherent in the system, but they're so blended. I have to practice self-forgiveness now because I was doing the best I could.
I like to believe that we're all doing the best we can with what we know at the time. But looking back, are there 2 or 3 things that you could say that, although you've forgiven yourself, that you're like, I definitely would have done that differently knowing what I know today?
Y'all, boundaries. Say it with me, audience. Boundaries.
So
I had no boundaries. The same little 12-year-old who was like, what can I do to make you like me? Was like, oh, you don't have to pay my full rate. Why would you pay my rate? You don't have to pay my rate. You know what? I didn't know how hard your business was struggling. I was working with struggling businesses at the time. All of them were struggling. I didn't know how hard you were struggling. You know what? I will take on that struggle for you. Don't pay me. Like, oh no, you can't meet at my appointed meeting time. Let me just add a whole bunch of more meetings, right? It was inherent people pleasing that I thought was marketability. No, I thought it was customer service. That's not customer service. Killing your boundaries is not customer service. So that was a biggie.
Yeah, because it's not sustaining your business or yourself, right?
Right. And then the other thing that I followed, and I got to be really careful here to not come off as hypocritical, because I've sold both personal development and business development for pretty much my entire working career that has been self-employed. I'm not knocking those things. I have incredible mentors and I've bought incredible programs, but I convinced myself early on that I didn't know enough to do things. And so I overinvested constantly. I'd make a little bit of money. I'd spend more than that instantly, right? It's like credit card debt as a human being. I was like, oh, I just paid off $45, so let me spend $300
on this next thing.
Right, exactly. And I would do the same thing. I would be like, oh, well, I'm going to try to launch a mastermind, but I don't know anything about mastermind. So I'm going to sign up for a 6-month program that I totally cannot afford and have no right to be in. And now I'm already financially struggling, have no boundaries, already overworking, approaching workaholism, taking every client, not even complaint, but comment as not even to heart, as law. And I carried that stuff with me for forever. I'm still dismantling some of it right now. Like, if I didn't get back to people within the reasonable amount of time as a 20-something, I'd be like, okay, these are my policies. My policies are now I get back to all emails within 24 hours. What? Whoa! Don't set that standard for yourself. Or if you have set that standard, you have to relax it. So I was rigid. I would let my brand pivot, but I didn't let my boundaries evolve. I didn't let my expectations of myself decrease. I didn't look at how I was treating me as asset number one in all those pivots. And now, the last few, I'm finally really getting it.
Which I love. And what I love about it too is you touch on something that I really want to touch on, right? There are so many coaches and consultants out there. And if I've bought something, like ultimately I'm responsible for it, right? Because I made that decision and I own it. But so many of these things that I've bought, except for maybe two, I have not implemented or have not followed through on for X, Y, or Z reason. There's always the reason, right? What I wonder is, from your perspective, how should solopreneurs or female entrepreneurs or small business owners, how do you recommend that they research a coach, a course, a mastermind, etc.?
Social proof, baby. Social proof. You may not know someone they've worked with, but everybody at that level. And if you don't have testimonials on your website, okay, side tangent, real quick. Y'all, take your testimonials, put them anywhere you have an opt-in or a buy button. It's going to handle the objection. I don't want to click that. Why should I click that? Oh, look, the person right underneath said, I'm so glad I clicked that. Okay, then they click that, right? But
So smart. It seems so obvious when you say it, but I'm like, I've never done that.
No. I mean, and I teach that all the time and went to my own website. Like the other day when I was working on my new website, I'm like, what's missing here? And I'm like, a testimonial under the click. Hello. Sorry, tangent on that. But everybody that is in this industry, be it personal or business development, understands the importance of testimonials. A lot of people will make those people available. Like I have a cadre of clients that will take calls for me all day long. I'm really lucky in that. I have the best clients in the world, and I've forged that relationship like it's the most important relationship of my life because they are. And because they're my livelihood, and I invest in my marriage and I invest in my friendship. So I invest in my clients, it's just the same. But I make my clients available. So first of all, see if they do. And if they don't, or if you don't have access, right? If you're buying something from, say, Amy Porterfield, who you're never going to be able to reach to be like, hey, can I buy this thing?
Oh, how many things I bought from Amy Porterfield.
Right? Yeah. Right. But what you can do is you can see who the testimonials are. You can type their name into LinkedIn and you can send them an email that says, hey, I'm wondering, I know that you provided a public testimonial and that's awesome, but I'm not a very established business yet. I'm wondering if you think this program would be too advanced for me or if there's anything months later that you're using or implementing. And I just ask them.
And it sounds like another thing that you did really well that I feel like you're not giving yourself credit for early on. Is that you got to know who your customers were because you were constantly talking to them and serving them. You weren't just like blasting out content.
No, I've been in the trenches since day one. I'm a hand holder. So no, I did always have this really deep understanding. But as such, I allow people to get to know me. I've gotten to know them, so I allow them to get to know me. And also, not for nothing, I've discovered what a low-key favor is. I think at the very beginning, I was like, I don't want to ask people that. They don't even know me. And now I'm like, I will send a stranger a LinkedIn message in 1 second asking for a referral in a program. Like I picked something out of my teeth. It's autopilot. I'm like, oh, I might buy this thing. Let me know.
That makes so much sense. And it's so... Also, because most of my audience are female entrepreneurs, your program is for both. And we're going to talk about your rebranding next. Are there hurdles that female entrepreneurs face more frequently than men? Or is it, what are they?
Oh, gosh, there are so many. And we can also make the case that men who are really in touch with feminine energy or lead from feminine energy and queer and non-binary folk also deal with this. And as a queer woman myself, there's a whole other aspect there. But women have been taught societally to be in serve yourself last roles. So what I always think about is I always think about my ancestors. I'm very tied into my family history, and I was lucky to be surrounded by so many people of my grandparents' generation when I was younger. My grandparents lived with me. My grandpa was a used car salesman, totally crazy, but wonderfully adored
Very
and beloved.
honest, from what I understand.
Oh my gosh, totally. Didn't know how to lie. German immigrant, no clue how to lie. Germans don't lie. They'll just tell you exactly what they want to say, and then if they were supposed to sugarcoat it after, they'll be like, "Oh,
Oh,
okay, right." But like my grandpa wouldn't know how to manipulate anyone; he just didn't. It what? But my Aunt Pauline, on the Italian side of my family, would cook Christmas meals for days. Okay, she'd be up at dawn. She'd be up until sleep when the rooster came out, cooking over pans, over stoves, everything else. Then the day comes, and I would watch her sit at the table while every single member of my extended family went up for not only firsts, but seconds.
and she wouldn't eat.
And she wouldn't eat. And I remember as a kid being like, what gives,
Never worked.
woman? What? Like, you should be the first one because of how hard you've worked. And I knew as a kid when I'm cooking, like I'm licking the brownie batter, I'm sticking my finger in the cake. If I'm making food, the first person to taste it is going to be me. And I watched her practically, sometimes she would get a meatball and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is absurd. And that is what I see women in self-advocacy professions like solopreneurship or small business do is we say, I will benefit when my clients have had their every whim fulfilled. I will prioritize myself when I hit the metrics that I feel like I need to in order to consider myself successful. I will debase myself. I will hurt myself for the benefit of the client because that's the caring, compassionate, womanly thing to do. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Ain't nobody in my family would have gone hungry if Aunt Pauline would have made herself a plate.
Exactly. But she was told, like we all are, don't take up too much space. Don't make too much
Don't
noise.
take up too much space. Don't, it's better to give than to receive and all that stuff. And what I tell my clients now is, yes, give more than you receive. That doesn't mean give everything and receive nothing. There's a whole landscape. It's like no one in my family, maybe she wouldn't have had to get in the buffet line first. Maybe she could have been the last person of first portions, but did she really need to wait until everybody had had seconds? No one in my family would have gone hungry. And in fact, I'm sure I'm not the only one who felt really guilty eating and watching her not eat. It hurt the pleasure of the food. I was eating, watching her not eat. How mindful could I be, right?
Because the rest of your family also allowed that to happen, right? So there's that.
Oh, yeah. And that's so funny because I think that my family was in two camps. And I think the family was in two camps of like, there's no use trying to argue with her. She's going to do what she wants to do. So I'm going to eat my meatballs. And then there's the rest of us being like, oh, I am modeling this behavior, but also it sucks that I need to model this behavior. And so I would just like take a meatball and like stick it on her plate and be like, eat, please. I was like a 5-year-old. I'm like, 5 seconds later, they're going to be like, Annie, sing us a Christmas song because that was my childhood. But before that, I'm like, okay, you need to eat something. Please eat something. And then the early years of my career, I could have said the same thing to me.
Exactly. It's not like we're exempt. We do the same thing.
No. And it's interesting because what I see now, back when I started figuring out what I wanted to do back in like 2009, entrepreneurship was a very different landscape. So Pam Slim, who I just frickin' adores, Escape from Cubicle Nation had like just come out. Chris Guillebeau's World Domination Summit had just started. Like all of these things that we know and love weren't there yet. Marie Forleo hadn't even really launched B School yet. Like all of these things that are prevalent in our lives didn't exist. And so I didn't have the same atmosphere that new businesses have or evolving businesses have now, in that I thought from a marketing brain, if I'm the most cost effective on the market, I'll sell the most. I went as low ticket as you could possibly go. Bargain basement prices that I would let people negotiate out of. Over delivery was the norm. And it was like weird martyrdom in my business. Look how noble I'm being by giving so much. Surely, if I give and give and give and give and give and give and give, I'll learn to receive in the process. Nope, sure didn't. But people coming onto the scene today in this very established, saturated landscape are almost immediately forced to go extremely high ticket and to be razzle dazzle from the jump and show up authentically right out of the gate and all of these other things. And y'all, that is a fire hose. So I don't know which situation was better. They both have their challenges, but it's really interesting because I don't see as many people, although undercharging is still a really big thing with women. I now see a whole other problem where before it was women being like, hold on, let me be Aunt Pauline. Let me serve and serve and serve and never receive. What I'm seeing now is, do I really have to charge $20,000? Receiving is really weird at this rate. And I'm like, no, you don't have to start at $20,000. Just don't start at 25, right? It's a pendulum. Let's like find something in the middle here between being the cheapest coach on the block and going directly to premium exclusive.
So true. And you're right. That's what I've found is that they run the gamut because I think I've pretty much done them all at this point where I get in with either a freebie, they get me in that way, and then they have my email, and then they start, it's the whole thing, the whole nurturing. I've had it done to me so many times and I allow it. So again, owning it. And that's where I guess I'm struggling because what attracted me to you is the non-sleazy, because that is how I, for some reason, internalize sales. And you're right, it's not noble because like if you can't keep your business going, then what's the point?
Right. It's self-torture at that point. I was in a play in college called Self-Torture and Strenuous Exercise. Great play. And that was early entrepreneurship for me, was self-torture and strenuous exercise, right? 100%.
So now you've rebranded. So talk to us a little bit about the realizations that you've had, whether big or small, whatever they were, and where you are, what you're going to be calling yourself and what you're going to be doing.
The Non-Sleazy Sales Academy is the best brand I have ever launched in terms of its resonance. I'm not surprised and I'm grateful that it clicked with you because we've heard enough about my own story. How I got out of over marketing and under delivering was I realized that I wasn't selling. All the nurture sequences and all that stuff, I love that stuff, okay? In my previous iteration, the Idea Doula, that's exactly what I was doing for new businesses. That's why I was a doula, right? I was birthing these new ideas and funneling them and doing all these things. And I realized that I was still marketing specifically to struggling businesses. Are you tired of not making any money? Da 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 da. All of my stuff was in this kind of struggle narrative, which also kind of worked with the doula stuff because I'm like, childbirth is challenging. You're birthing a business, blah, 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 blah. And I loved it, but it wasn't really clear to the point of resonance where I would get calls where people thought I was an actual doula or I only worked with women or I only work with new. And I was like, uh-oh. But everyone around me had the best marketing imaginable because we worked really hard on it. And all of us were still broken. So I was like, okay, first of all, fix the marketing, not to be so struggle centric. See if that fixes it. It didn't. And I was like, what? It improved it, but it didn't fix it. And I was like, wait, what's happening here? On a whim, I said to my Idea Doula clients, hey, send me your most recent sales call. Half of them said, what's a sales call? And I was like, I'm going to jump off a bridge. And then the other half said, oh, I don't want to send you that. I know they're not good. And I'm like, okay, herein lies the problem. And I realized if everyone around me is struggling to sell or just flat out not selling, they're learning that from guess who? This girl. Uh-oh. So I looked at my own selling practices and I read 138 sales books in rapid succession because I was like, look, I have misconceptions about this and other people that I know are good people are killing it. So how do I figure out how to do that?
In my own way.
in my own way for people like me that have the same hangups that I have. And so I still wasn't anticipating teaching sales fully until I realized that every time I'm like, hey, I'm launching this thing about non-sleazy selling. And they're like, oh, I needed that yesterday. Where has it been? And I'm like, okay. So what I did, again, the pendulum, I swung way wide. I took all my marketing stuff and I told all my clients, I am not doing funneling, copywriting, marketing, positioning, branding, any of that anymore. I am taking up space in this new lane called non-sleazy selling. And it worked really, really well for years. And I loved it. And you are not uncommon in that reaction. Like, people laugh, they get it, they instantly get what I'm going for. The challenge with the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy, and the reason I'm pivoting, and it's a different pivot than ever before, is normally I pivot based on a need in myself or a need in the market. Right now, I am pivoting because my brand is too limiting. I didn't call it the Non-Sleazy Business Academy. I called it the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy. Number one, I'm still dealing with the stigma of sales, which stuff like my book is working against, and we'll get there. But also, you have to follow your zone of genius, right? You have to follow your zone of genius, not your zone of confidence, not your zone of competence, your zone of genius. And what I've realized over the last maybe 18 months is that I'm still a marketer. I'm really good at teaching sales now, but I'm still a freaking marketer. And the work that lights me up and the clients that want to work with me are people that go to my website, even if it doesn't say I offer marketing, and they say, your site is so good, I want one. Or they say, your program is marketed so beautifully, or your book is so weird, I want one. And I have to, at this point in current iteration of business, go, okay, well, come into my sales training pipeline. Doesn't work. What I realized is that for the first time, I'm not doing a complete rebrand. I'm branding backwards, meaning,
This is getting very metaphysical here. I'm like branding
right?
backwards.
I'm branding up. Because when I started telling people I'm going to rebrand, they're like,
Right.
no,
We
the
love the
Non-Sleazy
sleazy
Sales
sales
Academy
academy.
brand, no. And I'm like, no. It's not going anywhere. It's changing. But it's one piece of my menu now. It's not the whole restaurant. I'm naming my restaurant, and the restaurant is Quirk Works Consulting. And the way that I came up with that is I started as a life coach, as a shiny theater kid, basically a manic pixie dream girl for hire. But even so, that was handheld customer care. I had a coaching business at the beginning of coaching. Because of that handholding, it was successful. People wanted to know how it was successful. They assumed it was my marketing. They started hiring me for marketing. I was hired for marketing. I loved it. And the marketing was failing everybody because we weren't selling. So then I started teaching selling. And now all the people around me are killing it because we all know how to sell really beautifully. And now what do we need again? Marketing. And I'm just trying to give myself an expansive brand I can play in.
That
And
appeal.
so that's how that appeals, and also feels, it has to appeal to the product base, but it also, for me, has to show the through line of my work.
And it's interesting that you say that because, one of the things that I always hear is the riches are in the niches. And yeah, sure. And that sounds like that's where you started. But then you also realize that you really have more breadth, that your clients need more breadth of support. And that's something that is your gift, where your gift lies.
And I niche by people. I niche by psychographics more than demographics, and I niche by problem solving. So my niche, if people ask me, oh, well, what's your niche? I say highly empathic, sparkly but struggling, whatever struggle means to them, solopreneurs, small business owners, and service providers who struggle to give and receive simultaneously and want to do things their own way. That is not, I work with, blah, 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 nice little soundbite. It's chunky, it's complex, but I know those people so well that I can spot them in a lineup because I was them, A, and B, I've surrounded myself with these people. I will never say I'm only going to work with coaches, although I work with predominantly coaches. I'm never going to say I work with only women. That's not it for me. I have no problem with people that only do that. I don't only do that. That's not what I do, because I have found highly empathic, heart-centered do-gooders in men and queer people. Like, for me, that's how I want to serve. But I agree with the riches and the niches is that we need to be specific about who we're serving, what problems we're solving, and how we solve them differently. And if you want to call that a form of niching, you can. I just call that good old brand differentiation.
Go old school, because you're right. That is what it is. And there are so many bells and whistles and terms, and it's so easy to get overstimulated when one's starting out today, right? I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned that you started more than a decade ago, very different landscape today, very saturated landscape. And maybe this isn't the right question to ask, but the question that I want to ask is there a specific social media platform that you have found works for you, or does it depend on the person?
It depends on the person and it depends on the problem. However, I am a high priestess of the Church of LinkedIn, y'all. High priestess. I never expected it. I am a shiny, weird theater kid. Y'all know this. If you've been listening, you know this. You may not think someone like me would be out here being like, you can leave all other social media behind if you focus on LinkedIn. What? Why? Because Instagram, which is my secondary. Love me some Insta. It's the one where I have the most personal pleasure other than LinkedIn. Seriously, I love LinkedIn. But
LinkedIn, if you're listening. Just kidding.
right? No kidding. Sponsor this podcast. I have basically collapsed my Facebook in that I'll repurpose and repush automatically content over there, but I don't do a whole lot on Facebook. I have dabbled in Pinterest. I have clients that have done more. I have dabbled in TikTok. I have clients that have done more. And I run a show, so I have some YouTube and some video otherwise, right? But
do you do
the
it all
difference
yourself?
between...
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. It's totally fine. I do a lot of it myself in that I delegate other things because I have a very... Number one, I enjoy it. I enjoy doing my own social. Number two, when I've delegated my social in the past, it's hurt my social listening because I sort of just set and forget it because somebody else is doing it. And then I'm getting really good comments and engagement that I'm just not even seeing. So part of it is self-policing me to be like, you can't just make shiny things and put them on the internet. You're trying to start conversations, go have them. And for me, for what my mentor calls the time pie, I don't mind that part of my day every single day is creating and putting out my own content. That works for me. What doesn't work for me is a lot of the other admin stuff that people are like, oh, I don't mind that. Or some of the delivery stuff that I'm like, oh, I don't mind that. That I'll delegate all day. But in terms of my social, and part of the reason I can do it myself is I really just focus on LinkedIn. My Instagram is set and forget. I just remind myself to go look at it and engage in the conversations. I also, though, have processes around social listening on Instagram. So my Russell Brunson Dream 100, for folks familiar with that, is on Instagram. I'm engaging with them on Instagram. But the difference between Instagram and LinkedIn is that if I go into my Instagram feed right now, even in my favorites, I'm going to have pictures of people's dogs, love them. Pictures of people's babies, love them. A bunch of influencers selling me makeup. Okay, I'm fine with that. Make your money, honey. But it's not streamlined in terms of purpose. I could be going to Instagram specifically to watch an hour of Shabazz Says Reels because I adore him and I need to laugh. If I'm on LinkedIn, I am there to connect or learn. That's it. So if I see business content or teachable content, educational content, I'm a lot more likely to stop and absorb it. If someone is introducing or featuring another person, I'm a lot more likely not only to follow their account and forget about it, but to hang out on their profile for a while, get to know them, maybe even connect with them, maybe even send them a message. And not for nothing, on the connection front, it's so easy. When I get tagged on something on Instagram, I'll get a couple follows. When I get tagged on something on LinkedIn, I get a ton of follows. And LinkedIn is the only platform where if I put something up and you liked it, like we'll take this interview. You're going to post this interview on LinkedIn. I'm going to share it on LinkedIn. But if one of my clients likes it, it goes into their feed and says, Susie Samuels liked this post. So folks that don't know me and don't know you are discovering SheVentures because one of my clients on LinkedIn liked it, not commented, not shared, liked it. No other platform has the bandwidth to do that. And the reason that they do is, as of last estimate I heard, only 2% of users are using LinkedIn as a content platform. So LinkedIn can do stuff like use a part of the algorithm to show what other people are liking. Could you imagine if Facebook did that? We would be drowning in third-party whatevers, but because LinkedIn is naturally curated, it's okay.
I love hearing what you're saying because I gravitate towards LinkedIn as well. I just get the most ROI, at least in terms of engagement, and that's helpful to me. And I also think that what I've heard is that when you're starting out, if you try to do social on all the different platforms, you're going to just completely overwhelm yourself and probably spend all day doing just that and not figuring out how to do anything else.
Oh, yeah. And your bandwidth and your energy management matters. We can look at this strategically and energetically, right? And I don't even mean woo energetically. You could add that whole layer for the woo-woo people out there. But strategically, if we want to have an omnipresent message, sure. So that's where the idea of like being on every channel comes from. But you can do that in a more lean way than you think by creating a vortex of your content, right? So have your podcast, have that go out, have different pieces go out, showcase people differently. You could do that in a much more lean way than I need to be on every single platform, number one, because you might be diluting your message instead of amplifying it, especially if you're putting out subpar content because you're so busy doing everything. So that's the strategic side. And energetically, at point of recording, there's a quote on this week's version of my podcast with leads guru inbound king Tom Polland, who says 80% of marketing fails because the founder doesn't want to do it. I could not agree more. I have run some amazing Facebook groups, and I loved them until I hated them. And once I hated them, I hated them. And yet, it was in my time pie. There it was. And I'm like, oh, why am I even here? This isn't converting. This is so stupid. I don't even like this. Okay, then don't do it.
Yeah, don't
do it. Either delegate it, like we talked about before. If it's an important part of your strategy, you can find someone to delegate it to, or don't do it.
If you had to choose between email marketing and social, organic social, which one?
Oh, God. If I had to only choose between email marketing and organic social, what would I pick? Social, but one of my favorite mottos I ever heard is choose your hard. I would choose social knowing that my nurturing and everything would be wildly different, but it's easier for me to get people onto my email list through social. So I would favor my top of funnel over my mid funnel, because if I had to sell somebody in a DM, I wouldn't DM them. They DM me. But if I had to do that, I would, because I need new people to make the engine run.
That makes sense. Perfect sense. ChatGPT, wanted to ask you about it. Do you think it's going to do anything to marketing at all?
It's great. Unpopular opinion, I think it's great. And as a marketer who does my own marketing, it's great. And as a strategist, I get asked better questions because you can go in and type, not that it's going to be awesome, but you can go in and you could type into ChatGPT right now, outline an 8-module program on personal development with an emphasis on Reiki, and it'll give it to you. It'll just be like, cool. And in the past, people would come to me and say, outline an 8-module course about Reiki. And I'd be like, okay, cool. But I wasn't really outlining the course. I was looking at how the problems flow. I was looking at, now that they've done this, what can they do now? I was looking at the energetic flow. I was looking at the packaging. I was looking at the customer delivery. ChatGPT cannot teach you how to be a good coach. ChatGPT cannot write copy that sounds exactly how it is coming off your head and heart. ChatGPT cannot teach you customer service. What ChatGPT can do is be an incredible brainstorming partner. Incredible. So, for example, in this rebrand, I had a orange color that I loved and a green color that I loved and no clue how to build a color palette around that. So guess what I did? I put those hex codes into ChatGPT and I said, recommend colors that are bright and warm and go with these colors. And what did ChatGPT do? Right away, Annie, Here's the whole thing. Here's the thing. I still gave those hex codes to a designer.
Sure. But it saved you probably 3 hours, right?
Tons of time. I have clients that I am their fractional CMO for. They come to me with marketing much faster for me to edit and perfect, whereas they would have spent hours writing an email that ChatGPT can write in minutes. They tell it what to write. ChatGPT is my junior copywriter, and then they give it to me to fix it. It takes the same amount of time, and I make the same amount of money, but I get to do deeper work. I'm not mad about that. It's the exact same situation for me as if we used a lower level copywriter. And it's not like there's not still work for those people, because there will always be work for those people in other stuff. And I'm still using my whole team and I'm still getting paid. But my favorite use of AI actually isn't ChatGPT. It's Capsho, CAPSHO. And Capsho,
I've heard of that. Yeah.
well, you should. It's specifically for podcasters.
Isn't it about transcripts?
It's beyond transcripts. So when I put an episode into Capsho, and I've also met the founding team, where my money goes is extremely important to me. So if I've been able to meet the team or engage with the team, then I'm going to feel even better. And the founders of Capsho are incredible and they care and everything. So I'm glad to endorse them. But Capsho, I was at Podfest, walking around Podfest, and I was complaining to a friend of mine, Danielle Weil, incredible copywriter who's also not worried about ChatGPT, by the way. She makes like $1,000 an hour. You think she's worried about a robot? She's not. And I'm walking around the expo complaining to her, and I'm like, I hate writing my podcast show notes so much. I hate it. And at that point, I was listening to all of my episodes back twice. Once for general gist, once for thing, and then I got to write the show notes and everything else. Y'all, that is hours. Hours. And I was walking by complaining about this, and I'm like, if I could find something that would just help me write my show notes, I'd be so happy. And then I saw this big, beautiful sign that said AI for podcasters, and on the first thing on the bulleted list was show notes. And I had my credit card out immediately. I was like, excuse me, does this do what it says? Does this do what it says it does? And they were like, oh, yeah. And I was like, does it actually listen to the episode? Because at this point, as of right now, I can copy and paste text into ChatGPT and say, what is the tone of this? What are the themes of this? And I could go into other stuff that are transcriptioners and be like, hey, get me a transcript for this. But there wasn't anything going, let me use AI to understand what this episode is. So now I put everything in Capsho. Not only does it recommend all my social stuff, it tells me the themes of the episode. It pulls quotes for the episode. It pulls the timestamps of the episode. It does all of these things. I'm still going to rewrite the paragraph it gives me, but I can finally get ahead of my podcast marketing because I don't have to spend 3 hours listening to everything twice and then writing. I put it in. I look at the summation they give me. It refreshes my memory. It cuts everything down, and it makes it easy for me, as we already talked about, to do my own social. I want to have the executive eye on what quotes we use. That doesn't mean I want to listen back and have to write all the quotes down. Capsho serves up like 20 different quotes, and I go, that one, not that one, not that one, not that one, and I'm done.
And also, like honestly, there is nothing for me. I don't want to listen to myself. And you know what I mean? Like, once you've done the podcast, I love listening to the guests, but like, enough. Capsho, I'm going to put that in the show notes. Good to know. I'm going to recheck it out because I saw it maybe early on and I was like, I'm not quite sure what this is, but obviously it's something I need to.
Oh, they just did a whole giant launch. They're amazing. But yeah, but even so, that is an example of how AI is getting used, and not for nothing. Most of the writers and marketers have already been playing with AI
for a
really long time. We can embrace our robot overlords, or we can fear them. I'd rather collaborate with them and then give my people whose jobs they're replacing, air quotes, better things to do with their time and better things to do for my money.
I love it. I love your mindset. We're going to end with and then I want to know more about how people can work with you, including someone needs to work with you. What would you say is your biggest professional win and your biggest professional regret or mistake? Because some people don't like regret.
Ooh. I'm oh my God, I was about to be like, I did it my way, regrets. My biggest win is twofold, and I can't really separate them. One half of it is that I'm still here. Businesses come and go. I'm still here. Talk about musical theater. There's a really, really incredible song written by Stephen Sondheim called I'm Still Here. And it's good times and bad times. I've seen them all in my dear. I'm still here. I am still here. Over a decade later, I've pivoted 750 times. It's a privilege to pivot. It's a privilege to struggle in this way. But the other thing is, because I've been doing this and persevering and relying on myself for 13-ish years now, I'm so deeply embedded in the root of my business that I don't have to worry about being authentic. I don't know any other way. So not only am I still here, I'm still here. True me. Not grade school facsimile me, not gurued me, real me. The me that you're interviewing right now is the same me that's going to go celebrate my husband's birthday later. It's the same me that my clients are going to see later. It's me. And I feel like relying on myself through all these years has made it so that I only know how to show up as me. And I'm grateful for that because now that's what people resonate with. They love the non-sleazy brand. They come in for that. They stay for me. And that I've
That's very
earned.
validating.
It is validating. And my main regret or mistake is sales avoidance, 100%. It's all the things that sales avoidance is. It's undercharging. It's rapidly discounting. It's relying on gimmicks. It's trying to do sharkish sales policies because you paid a really expensive program and that's what they did to you. So you figure it must work. It's all of the things that we've talked about that stand between you and compensation. And the reason I wrote a book about it, the reason I know about it, the reason I've dedicated my life to it is I've watched it kill so many businesses, including almost mine. I got an autoimmune disease so severely that I have polka dotted skin for the rest of my life. I look like a cheetah. That is what happens when you over deliver occupationally for a decade. That's what happens. If I had conquered my sales avoidance faster, my health would be better. My financial health would be better. I would have less credit card debt, right? I'd sleep better at night. But I'm fixing that still after several years of doing it right. But what I regret is I wish I had allowed myself to sell well faster. And I wish I had prioritized my own receiving so much earlier.
I'm speechless. I'm like, oh, it really resonates with me. Let's just, I guess, wrap it up with letting people know how to work with you. How can they work with you?
With the rebrand, the Non-Sleazy Sales Academy is becoming a selling seminar. And I'm also going back to helping people own their weird, which is what Quirk Works is all about. But a great way to come into my world is twofold. If you are struggling in your business right now, what I want you to do is I want you to go to sellcoachsell.com, even if you're not a coach, and I want you to redeem your copy of my noir sales novella, The Coach Who Would Not Sell, because I tried to write a sales book and I just couldn't. So if any of this stuff is resonating in a ouchy way, like I really need to fix that way, that's my gift to you. That's the book that I needed when I was in that spot. So go grab it, Sell Coach Sell. Say SheVentures sent me as the code, you'll get it. If, however, you just want some Annie Sunshine, or you just want to connect, you want to tell me what you thought of this episode, or you want to explore working together one-on-one or coming into one of my programs, guess where I'm going to send y'all? Right back to LinkedIn, my very favorite platform in the world. Yes, you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Anniepreneur. But if you want to learn about me, my podcast, my work, my people, my work fam, my clients, any of that, find Annie P. Ruggles on LinkedIn. Don't just follow me, connect with me. And if you really want super duper bonus points, connect with me, send me a message and say you heard me on this show.
Aw, thank you. This was such a great conversation, Annie. Thank you.
Oh, the pleasure's all mine.
You've been listening to SheVentures. Like what you heard? You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe and sign up for our newsletter so you never miss a show.